Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at Jacinio Tweets and at SheKnowsArsenal. It's a little bit of a late one, a late kind of daily news situation. You guys know I'm all the way here on the West Coast, and I did a show earlier on the football terrace, so I had to do this one a little bit later. But I hope you guys still care what I have to say because I have tons to talk to you guys about in regards to Arsenal and just general like football news. There's tons of stuff going on. Obviously, we're getting closer and closer to the transfer window, getting closer and closer to the end of the season, and things are really starting to pop off, which is super exciting, especially because I feel like Arsenal are going to have a big window this summer. It's funny because on the TV, it's right over here. So if I'm looking over there, I was rewatching our game against Leeds, and it was just like the end where they showed Jesse Marsh's face when he thought that they were going to score like right then in extra time. And I just remember it just all came back to me how crazy that game was and how close it actually ended up being considering how dominant we were. And it always just kind of comes back for me to the fact that this team is so young. And yesterday, when we did the player ratings, a lot of you guys were like, why can't we finish out games? Why can't we, just create those bigger margins? And I think it just comes down to quality and experience. And sometimes experience ups the quality in the team. So like players like Saka and Martinelli, they'll obviously get better and learn how to be more clinical in those situations. Odegaard as well. But some of it is just quality, like it just is. And so I think some of the players that we're going to be talking about today on this daily news segment will kind of fit into that category of players that can up the quality and experience in this team so that when we have games where we're completely dominant, we leave them with a 3-4 goal cushion instead of leaving a little bit of a carrot there for the opposition to come back into the game. I think having more experienced players and players with more quality, especially at the top end of the pitch, will give us the ability to get those margins, increase our goal differential, and also like rest players and give players that are kind of on the fringes some additional playing time. I think because our games have been so close, we haven't been able to rotate and see other players come in and get a couple minutes here and there. And that's something that I've really missed over the last couple of years. You'd get the odd, young player coming in for a couple minutes here and there at the end of home games when we blew a team out 3 or 4-0. I've missed that. But I think it's just because we don't have the experience and quality just yet. But we'll definitely get there. So it's nothing to really freak out about now. It could be something that costs us this season. I have to be honest. I just feel like if we're not clinical in these next couple of games, it could cost us. But ultimately, I think this team is doing as good as it possibly can, especially with some of our bigger players out. So you just have to take the rough with the smooth with the team like this. So before we get just in the meat and potatoes of this whole thing, make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel. Let's see who is in the chat. Tony says he can hear my mic moving during the intro. Yep, I'm always doing stuff during the intro. Like, so when I have the music going and the overlay, like as soon as I press the intro to go, I have to like take off the overlay, put the music down, put me into the studio, move my mic. So it's like a lot of things like moving around. So there you go. Ray says, Jacinio, Becky Ramsdale says, nice. Antonio song goes to Jess when Arsenal draws. Edison says, Lukonga should go on loan. Tielemans and someone who can play with Partey and also play as a single pivot when Partey is injured. Ruben Neves. That's Edison's transfer window. Lynn says, I think that for such a young team, they have gone toe-to-toe with the more experience in the league. They really have. They've done a really good job. So it's not something that I feel like is like oh my gosh, why aren't they doing it? It's just more like this is the reality of the squad at the moment. But we have to protect them. And they'll just be 1 year older next season when I do think they'll be better. But they still may not be the finished article. So we have to keep that into consideration. So let's go ahead and get stuck in. So here we go. the first thing that I want to start off with is just the biggest transfer news of today. I know it's like directly involved with Arsenal, but it does affect us in some way, or it could potentially. So Erling Haaland is going to Manchester City. It's done and dusted. It's been here we go by Fabrizio Romano, if you consider him really reliable. But all reports are saying that that's pretty much done. And so this is a huge transfer for world football in general, because this is somebody that, I mean, besides Mbappe, is the best striker out there. I mean, in terms of, young and upcoming strikers. And we've spoken about this on this channel so many times, that beyond Haaland and Mbappe, everybody else underneath that is a younger prospect that's going to cost a lot of money. That could go either way. They could end up being really, really good, or they could flop. So having somebody like Erling Haaland coming to the Premier League is a big deal. And I think it would have been almost a bigger deal had he not gone to Man City, like had he had gone to Real Madrid or Manchester United. Manchester City, I don't think they get the same that other teams do when they get these transfers over the line. But they've signed Haaland, and they've also signed another young striker named Julian Alvarez. I think he came from River Plate. So they are kind of rebuilding their front line with younger players with different profiles. And so having somebody like Haaland running at us, I think, is going to be scary next season. But I do think that this was the right move for him. I was hoping that he'd go somewhere different than Mbappe, because we kind of want to see this rivalry shape up, and it doesn't really shape up if they're at the same team. And I think somebody like Pep can really mold him into something special. I mean, he's already special, but he's going to grow more. He's only 21 years old. He does have a strange, or a longer injury record than he probably should at his age, but that's something that I'm sure Pep and their team already know about. And let's keep it real, they have enough players to kind of rotate in and out. So I don't think that'll be a big issue, but this is a huge transfer. And so Haaland to Man City is a done deal. And how will he fit into Pep's system? I feel like it's interesting because we know Erling Haaland plays kind of like more of a counter-attacking style. He's not particularly somebody that, plays against a low block very often. We know in the Bundesliga, they don't believe in low blocks. Everybody has a high line, and there's always space in behind. He's a big space player. I'm not going to say that he has no technical ability, but let's not act like he's like he's Firmino. He's not that type of player. He's more of a number 9, like just a complete number 9 type player. And so I think that this is something that maybe Pep is looking to implement into his system, so he has a different look. Because in some games, and this is the odd game for Manchester City, but there are times where they drop points because they just can't break down a low block, or they don't have something different. They don't have a true goal scorer in their toolbox. And so somebody like Erling Haaland that could just get on the end of some of these chances, I think, is important. I remember in the Champions League when they played against PSG, there was a game where they were completely dominant, but they just couldn't put the ball in the back of the net. And they could have really benefited from somebody like Haaland just to get on the end of those crosses. They had players like Raheem Sterling and Bernardo Silva trying to get it on the end of those crosses, and it really wasn't working. And I remember Arteta said a long time ago that Manchester City is frustrated and have ran out of ideas when they start just hoofing crosses into the box. And if they do get frustrated, this guy can get on the end of those. So this is a very interesting transfer. I wonder if Liverpool will respond. I don't think they will, because they've already brought Luis Diaz. I don't think they need to turn around and buy a striker to just show Man City who's boss or anything like that. But what a great signing. And when transfers like this happen, the dominoes tend to fall. So Dortmund will obviously need to buy a striker. Manchester United need a striker. We need a striker. Chelsea may be in the market for a striker. And then there's teams down the league that still need strikers. Even Barcelona is talking about bringing somebody in to start over Aubameyang because Depay is going to leave. So a lot of dominoes are going to fall off of the back of this. And I think it's interesting that we're seeing Darwin Núñez to Manchester United is becoming a transfer rumor that's starting to grow a little bit more, which I do think after doing the scouting report and also seeing Arsenal Vision scouting report on Darwin Núñez, I didn't really see how he would fit in our system because we don't really play counterattacking. Manchester United play a lot more like that than we do. So maybe he's a better fit for them. But I wanted to ask you guys, would you be disappointed if Darwin Núñez ended up at Manchester United? Was that the guy that you wanted? Because it does look like they are making a concerted effort to bring him to Old Trafford. And he is somebody that we've been linked with, but not so much recently. So what do you guys think about that? Ray says, I don't think Núñez is going to save United. They got big problems. Lynn Simpson says, Arsenal need to go for a big striker and try to compete. Who is a big striker? Ray says, hard to stop Haaland, but deep block stops his pace. Then just have to fight, bully him in aerials, and get real tight on him and test his nimbleness of his feet. I mean, that sounds like a hard job anyway. Just even that, even if you stop him from running, he's such a big, powerful striker. So yeah, he's going to be interesting. But then at the same time, he doesn't play against the same quality of center backs in the Bundesliga than he will be in the Premier League. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see how he adjusts. Lalitia says, wish his release clause was going to be valid from next season instead. We could have got him. Next step up for a player of his profile at Arsenal right now. Great setup for a player of his profile at Arsenal right now. I mean, that's just the reality of being kind of where we are, right? Is that we're probably a season too slow in being able to get these players. I mean, there's Tielemans, Jude Bellingham, Declan Rice. A lot of people really love Declan Rice, Haaland. These players we're just not going to be able to recruit because we're just not really in that space. Frankie de Jong, he's another one that I'd love to see at Arsenal playing in that left 8 position, but we're not going to be able to recruit them because we're not a established top 4 team at the moment. So we just have to kind of swallow it and just move on, But hopefully the next time these players come around, we'll be in a spot where we could bring them in. Let's see. Edison says, Man United need to take a page from Arsenal's book, clean out, go for youth and rebuild, trust the process. From all the reports out there, it basically is saying that that's what our Manchester United want to do. They want to bring in younger, hungrier, talented players to, and they want to do a full clean out. So they'll probably do something very similar. Captain Joka says, why is it when Man City get Haaland, it's what a great signing, but when Arsenal is going for Núñez, it's I don't know how he will perform in the Premier League. Typical bias against Arsenal. Yeah, I mean, I didn't see a lot of people saying that Darwin Núñez wouldn't do well in the Premier League. I actually think he will. My concern was around how he'll fit into our system, but I do understand what you're talking about when it comes to Arsenal. There tends to be anytime we're linked with a player, that player is automatically shit and they're no longer good, even though like 5 seconds before they were just fine. Very similarly, when we were interested in Gabriel, Manchester United were also very interested in Gabriel. And once he came to Arsenal, he was crap. And nobody has ever picked him for, anything significant when it comes to center backs. And that's because a lot of the people making those decisions and picking those players are Manchester United fans. So it's kind of like, it's just the reality, and you saw how our transfer window went, even with Ben White. Ben White was linked with Chelsea and Liverpool. The moment he signed for Arsenal, he was the shittiest center back they'd ever seen. So that's just kind of how it is with Arsenal. And it's just the reality, Muaz says, can Arsenal sign Núñez? I mean, we can, but it doesn't look like that's the direction that we're going in anymore. But it's very early on. I mean, these transfer rumors, it's very premature. So we're going to talk about them, but there's always the chance that things can turn around. So we could end up with Núñez, but right now it just looks like they're pivoting their efforts towards Núñez and we're pivoting in a different direction. Nashville says it's fair because the jump from Portugal is bigger than Germany. Ray says United need to get a pressing coach. Their players can't be that bad to be uncoachable. Bit like us 2 years ago, we couldn't coordinate a press. I think pressing is one part physical and one part desire. Like if you don't actually want to do it, you're not going to do it. And our players were kind of like that. They could do it, but a lot of times they just chose not to. So that's just the reality of that. Lagoon says, I think João Felix would be an excellent signing. Once he was linked to Arsenal, he started banging in goals. And so I don't really know what the viability of that is anymore. You guys know I love João Felix, would love him at Arsenal. But again, it looks like we're going in a different direction. All right, so let's see what else you guys are saying. Christopher Kafar says, if Arsenal signed Gabriel Jesus, do you think he'll be the first choice striker? That leads me straight into our next section where we will be answering that question, Christopher. Thank you so much for that. Make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And let's move forward. So, Gabriel Jesus. The reports today are basically saying that Arsenal's main target in the striker position is Gabriel Jesus. That's coming from Fabrizio Romano. And talks are underway regarding the transfer of Gabriel Jesus to Arsenal. The player will leave City after Haaland's arrival. I forgot what that guy's name is. I'll find it later. But basically, there's been tons of reports around this today and over the last couple of weeks that Gabriel Jesus has been in talks with Arsenal for a while. And he wants to leave because, hello, there's a World Cup around the corner and he's not making the squad. He wants to be the main guy, and Arsenal are willing to offer that to him. Originally, when the reports came out, I thought that he would be the second striker. But the more I read reports, I don't think that's really what it is. I think he would come in and be the main guy. I also, if you guys don't follow ES Grimes on Twitter, maybe you should. She does a lot of reporting, and she tends to be pretty reliable when it comes to transfer news. And I'll read this to you guys really quick while as I get it up. Let's see, what did she say about Tielemans? Hold on, you guys. Give me 1 second. Let me just try to pull it up really quick. I took a screenshot of it. Okay. So this was her original report, was that nothing new like reported. Our priority talks are with Pepe, Saliba, if he's extending or not. Jesus made a transfer request and agreed personal terms with Arsenal. Pep says, I want Jesus to say. We saw that. AFC are in advanced talks with Victor Osimhen, but they put $100 million price tag on him. And so that has created a significant roadblock in those negotiations. The update on that was that Arsenal tried to negotiate Osimhen's fee down, and there was no chance of that. After agreeing personal terms with Gabriel Jesus, AFC's talks with City. Price tag is 40 million. We've also seen reports of it being 50 million euros for Gabriel Jesus. After AFC are reluctant about 100 million for Osimhen and prefer to wait and see how Jesus will decide. So those reports also kind of sound like Jesus would be the main guy. And so that's interesting, because I always was kind of under the impression that it was going to be like somebody like Jesus plus somebody like Osimhen, Tammy Abraham, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but that doesn't seem like it's the case. And so I think that opens up an opportunity for Jesus to come in, but then for us to do something different for this additional attacker. Maybe it's a winger, somebody that can play across the front three. And that also opens up the opportunity for Nketiah to stay. But I wanted to ask you guys, is Gabriel Jesus good enough to be the main guy? A lot of apprehension around Gabriel Jesus came from the fact that people don't feel like he scores enough goals. He doesn't have enough goals in him. And I wonder if him not scoring enough goals also comes from the pressure at City, feeling like he needs to live up to the Aguero kind of numbers, and also feeling like he's not the main guy. That's something that he's very adamant about getting at Arsenal. If he comes, he wants to be the starting striker. So can he be the main guy for us? Is he somebody that you guys think can lead the line for Arsenal? Let's see. S says Jesus is good enough to fit into any squad in Europe. Nashville says he would be a great fit. Verge 59 says Arteta certainly has the ability to coach Gabby into that role. Kenneth says he's good option as the main man. Saida says signing Jesus as a main striker just sums us up as a club. It would be so disappointing, especially if we get Champions League as well. And I understand why you feel like that, Saida. I think there's a lot of Arsenal fans that are really wanting a big summer signing in the striker position. And I think that comes from, in the past, having such big strikers. You think about Ian Wright, Anelka, Henry, Van Persie, Aubameyang. Like, we've had some really big striker names at Arsenal, and we want somebody to fill that number 9 position the right way. And if you get into Champions League, you want to do something flashy. But I have to be honest, you guys, I don't really see how we can bring in 2 strikers and a midfielder and maybe a couple of fullbacks and bring in somebody like Osimhen that has a price tag of 100 million on him. You know, if all we needed was the striker, I think we could do it. Like, if the team was pretty much done, ready to go, we had all the players that we needed, we just needed added that cherry on top, I think you could go for an Osimhen. But because they're unwilling to negotiate the fee down, which if I'm Napoli, I'm not looking to do anything less than 100 million, because guess what? We paid 85 million for him anyway from Lille. So I understand why they don't really want to come down on the price. That being said, I don't think we should blow all of our transfer budget on one player when we know we need multiples, right? So I think it's just a matter of, kind of similarly to what we were talking about earlier, we can't get Haaland and we're not really in the market for the top names. It's just not, we're not at the right point in our project to do that. We have to lift the levels of the team, raise the levels, get us to have a Champions League level squad, but maybe it's not the type of team that's going to win the Premier League and win the Champions League. Like, we're just a level below that. But I get where people are like, that would be really disappointing, because I understand wanting that big name striker to come in. Hefty says, Gabriel Jesus fits the age profile with potential. Everyone saying he's washed must be biased. All he's ever done is win, and he is a top talent coming from Man City. Raymond says he's not a confident striker, and I think he's lucky to be playing for City. I mean, he's put up some very good numbers for Manchester City. He got there when he was 21. To be lucky, I think, is almost like disingenuous when you talk about his time at Manchester City. He has played at the top level of the game. He plays for Man City. So for him to be lucky, I would say that that's more like maybe somebody like Ake is lucky to be there. Gabriel Jesus is somebody that is kind of in that in between of his career, when you've aged out of being a young player and you're coming into your prime, and the environment that you're in might not be the best suited for you to achieve all of your goals. And right now, Man City's moving in a different direction. They have the opportunity to buy Haaland. They've taken that. They bought Julian Alvarez, so they'll want to shift around that front line. And that doesn't mean Gabriel Jesus is not a good player. I'm telling you right now, I would take anybody from City, bar Ake, Zach Steffens, and Mendy. Anybody else I would take at Arsenal, because they are that good of players, like even the guys that don't play all the time. So I think he's lucky to be playing for City is a little bit like far for me to say, even if I understand why people don't rate him as high as other players. Lewis Christie says, if he's not good enough for City, why would he be good enough for us when we want to catch City? Well, you can catch. Here's the thing. If he's good enough for City, he's definitely good enough for us where we are right now. And where we are right now, if you added Gabriel Jesus to our team, he does improve us. But just because we want to be like City doesn't mean we can attract the same players that they can attract. So they can attract Haaland. We can't. But does that mean that we wouldn't take a player that would improve us just because he's coming from a team that we want to eventually be able to be like? No. I think sometimes we want to skip too many steps. We are a team that is scraping into the top 4. If we're honest, if we're really, really honest, we're scraping into the top 4. Man City are like 20 points ahead of us, and that's a huge gap. So I don't think this is like taking the dregs from Chelsea, where they're a team that's only like a point ahead of us. Their players are kind of a mismatch of a couple of different managers, and we're taking the old guy that couldn't get a new contract. This is somebody that Pep wants to keep, but he can't because he's adding new players to the squad. He's 25 years old, and he's better than everybody that we have playing for us in attack. I think the only player that can chat to him right now is probably Saka, and that's just the truth. So, of course, I would take him. That doesn't mean that the next window that we have, we take more of City's players that they're moving on. But I think this is a good step. If it wasn't City, let's say this was a Real Madrid player, top of La Liga, would we care? Or is it just because he's coming from a Premier League team? Let's see. Ike says, I would prefer a taller player in the center forward role, someone who can score with both head and feet. See, Ike, here is, I think, the misconception around scoring goals with your head. I've seen Mo Salah, Diego Jota, Gabriel Jesus, Raheem Sterling, Sadio Mane. I've seen Aguero. I've seen very, very short players that are no more than 5'9", score tons of header goals. It's not about how tall you are. It's about, do you want it? And I'm sorry, we've had a lot of strikers, a lot of players up top that just don't want the ball to hit their head. Abominating. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, I just think in the end of the day, we need players that are more athletic, that have more technical ability, and they will score goals with their head. But equally, we don't really need players to score with their head, right? I mean, headed goals are a very low quality chances anyway. So I just think we need better attacking players, period. And I think he fits that mold. But that's more from me. I don't really care about somebody heading the ball or being tall to head the ball, because I know it's just about desire. I've seen Gabriel Martinelli put the ball in the back of the net with his head, and he's not tall. Happily Egg says, I think he fits Arteta's ideas. I think Arteta wants to have a false 9, extra midfielder to pass through other teams. It's what he learned at Man City. Ray says, this could be a great move for Jesus. I feel he was always the kid at City. He joined them as a teenager. Some players need to move to mature and develop to the next level. I agree. I think some players need a change of environment. The player is definitely there. And it's not even like you have to squint to see the player. He's been showing it for the last couple of weeks. The player is there. He needs a different environment. Nano says, if Jesus is a disappointment, please explain who we could realistically get, money aside. I just don't think there's a lot of options there in the striker market. And if it takes 50 million euros to bring Gabriel Jesus, what is that, like 45 or something in pounds? If that's what it takes to bring a player of his level to the Emirates, I'm totally fine with that. Tony says Gabriel Jesus at worst is a solid stopgap and will still give us 20 goals and assists that we have been missing in that position. I mean, look at what Eddie Nketiah has been able to do in the short time that he's been starting for Arsenal through the center. It's not that deep, you guys. We just need better attackers with more quality that can run, that can ask questions of center backs, and Gabriel Jesus is definitely that. Raymond says Nunez is a better striker than Gabriel Jesus. Yeah, I mean, he's more of a traditional striker, a traditional number 9. I would say that Gabriel Jesus has been doing it in the Premier League, and Darwin Nunez has been doing it in a league that's significantly worse than the Premier League. But I get your point on that, and he could very well end up being better than Gabriel Jesus if he comes to the Premier League. Gunnar Soul says Jesus and DCL will be a solid plan A and plan B. I can't lie. S says, I can't believe we're likely to get only one midfielder that summer. See, we always go back to the midfield conversation. As you know, that's like my biggest bugbear with this club is like, I just cannot believe we're only going to bring in one, but it is what it is. So let's move on, you guys. Let's move on from the Gabriel Jesus. We have so much to get through. So next we're going to talk about Raheem Sterling. So this is coming from the Telegraph. Again, we're not here to debate the quality of source. We're here to just debate how we feel about it, talk about it in general, and just have a little bit of fun, you know? And Telegraph says that Arsenal are ready to explore the possibility of signing Raheem Sterling should the opportunity arise. The forward is entering the final year of his contract at Man City. And so we spoke about this the other day that, well, one, we need another winger because if Pepe goes, if the rumors are true, he will go. We need players that can play in multiple positions, and Raheem Sterling can play off of the left or off of the right. And we need more experienced attackers. We need players that have been there and done it before. There were chances that Martinelli had and Odegaard had against Leeds that if you have an experienced striker there or an experienced attacker, we go into the half with 3 or 4 goals and we can just move on, right? And we don't have that scare at the end of the game. But we don't really have that right now. And Raheem Sterling is a world-class player. And for me, like to see how the media treats him and how, I mean, he has almost the same goals and assists as Mane this season, but Mane is looked at as this way better player. Like there's just more, I think, love and warmth towards him. Where Raheem Sterling, it just doesn't feel the same. And I don't think he's been mistreated at City. I just feel like sometimes he's that backup option. When things aren't going in, put Raheem in, you know? But I think he scored like almost 150 goals for Manchester City in his time there. That is exceptional work from Raheem Sterling. And of course, he's playing in a system that creates a lot of chances, but you still have to put those away. And so I think Raheem Sterling is a very, very good player. He's 27 years old, so right in his prime. And he has 12 goals and 3 assists in the Premier League and 3 goals and 2 assists in the Champions League. So obviously not his best season, but we've seen him have seasons with 20 goals before. And he's just such a good player in and around the box. And on his day, he's unplayable. I guess my question here for Raheem would be, could you not go somewhere else? You know, I do rate Arsenal and I do think that our project is really good, but is there not somewhere else that he could go? And I also saw that recently he said he's happy at City and he would like to stay there. So I wouldn't be surprised if he signed a new contract at City. I just don't see why City would get rid of one of their most experienced and potent, you know, attacking options, especially when you look at how Grealish has kind of had a slow start to his Man City career. I don't see them, you know, selling Gabriel Jesus and letting Raheem Sterling go. So this is one that I'm not sure that I feel like is particularly realistic, but I do think we need a player of this quality. If we were to bring in Gabriel Jesus, we need to bring in somebody else that can bear the burden of scoring goals for Arsenal next season. So there's not so much pressure on Saka, Martinelli, and Emil Smith-Rowe. So I would even look at, you know, Gnabry if we got Champions League, somebody else who's running their deal down, that's within their prime, that has the experience already in the Champions League, that can play on both sides. I think if you were to get into the Champions League, Raheem Sterling is definitely somebody that you could look for or look at, even if it doesn't feel that realistic. Serge Gnabry as well. And if we were not to make Champions League, or if we couldn't get those two, maybe you look at Cody Gakpo, who's less experienced, but also like a true goal scorer. So what do you guys think about Raheem Sterling to Arsenal? Is that realistic? Do you think that's something we should even chase down? Do you think it's just so that he can get a new contract? What do you guys think about Raheem? Raymond says it best. Let's smash the like button, you guys. There's about 230 of you guys watching, so make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Happily X says Sterling stays at City. If you're getting Haaland, you need wingers. I kind of agree with that as well. I just don't see the reason why they would move him on. But at the same time, like, we need somebody like this. So that's why I said look at somebody like Serge Gnabry, because he's running down his contract. It doesn't look like he'll stay at Bayern Munich. And he's similar. He's not as good as Sterling. Sterling is world class, but he is somebody with more experience that can score those goals. Let's see. Craig Malloy says, Jess, we had top 4 over 20 years under Wenger. So what's the difference between Arteta? Explain. I don't know what I need to explain there. I mean, there's no real difference. I mean, what's the difference? I mean, we still need to be in the top 4. I guess I know you're like upset that people are excited about getting it or whatever, but it just is what it is. We all know why getting top 4 would be important for Arsenal. Alan Warner says he just wants to follow Jesus to a fresh project. Tony says, I effing love Sterling so much. He's by far my favorite non-Arsenal English player, and I'm not English. IP says, I'd rather we get Gakpo instead of Sterling. Nano says, we should never have sold Gnabry. I'm so over the Gnabry thing, and we should have not sold him. Like, we all know what happened with Gnabry. He had the knee injury. He really wanted to go and get that playing time. It just hasn't been there, done that thing. You know what I mean? And he's had a great career, and I've let it go. Moss Sports Talk says Gnabry to come back. If no Gakpo, would we like? I mean, that would kind of be my order of it. Would be Sterling is the dream, but I don't think it's happening. But if you get Champions League, try to convince Gnabry to come back. If you can't get Gnabry, then try to get Cody Gakpo, because we need true goal scorers up top. And even though I do think that Martinelli is a true goal scorer, I'm not sure with the combination of Emile Smith-Rowe, Saka, and Martinelli will have enough. You need somebody else that just scores goals, and Cody Gakpo does that, but he would obviously need a big step up to the Premier League, even though I think he's so talented. Augustine says, I believe Sterling would improve our attack. Definitely quality wingers plus his relationship with Arteta. 100%. 100%. Let's see. Tony says, I don't feel like it's realistic. We'll have a lot of Arsenal, Man City links while Arteta and Pepper, the coaches. I think it's an easy link to make. So I agree with that. Zitch says we need more than one attacker who can play across the front 3. That's why I think we need to kind of look if Gabriel Jesus is going to be the main guy, which it looks like that's what we'd be looking for. And we're not going to bring him in and say, okay, sit on our bench. He's going to play. So the other person that we bring in needs to be a true goal scorer that can play across the front 3. So you can kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Somebody who can maybe play through the middle, maybe play off of the left, but also play off of the right, so that Bukayo Saka can take a rest. If we sell Pepe. And I think Serge fits in that category, as well as Cody Gakpo. Kenneth says Serge Gnabry instead of Sterling. S says Sterling and Jesus would be perfect, but that's so unlikely. GD says love Sterling, but we need money elsewhere. Price too high, would prefer cheap options. And I have his transfer market up here. I know that this isn't always super accurate, but right now his value is $93 million, which I think in pounds is like maybe somewhere around 75, 80. We're not going to spend that on Raheem Sterling. I don't care what his contract situation is. But Jesus, I do think is more realistic, not really Raheem Sterling. Make sure you guys are voting on the community poll that I have up right now. I do have a talking point that I'm going to bring up towards the end of the show. It's around a tweet that I saw about the midfield. You will like this conversation. It's about if we bring in Tielemans and we keep everything the same, is that midfield good enough for the Champions League if we were to qualify? Go ahead and vote on that community poll, because we'll talk about that in maybe about 20 minutes or so. Now, moving on to probably the biggest transfer story that's come up over the last couple of days. When I was on the latte firm a couple of nights ago, I think, actually, was it yesterday night? It might have been last night. But we spoke about Tielemans because the news around Tielemans had just broke. It wasn't last night. It was last night. And this has not come as any sort of shock, you guys. It couldn't have, because these links have been coming out for the last couple of weeks from some reliable journalists. So let's just wrap our heads around the Yuri Tielemans thing. We're gonna have the conversation about it. Okay. So this is coming from Fabrizio Romano. Arsenal appreciate and are interested in Tielemans if conditions are favorable. 30 million to 35 million euros. David Ornstein says Arsenal decision makers are all keen to sign Yuri Tielemans, and agent dialogue and player agent dialogue. Hold on, what does that say? Agent dialogue is encouraging so far. So I think we heard around January that Yuri Tielemans' agent had been at Arsenal to talk to Edu. So this has kind of been in the works. And so Yuri Tielemans is somebody who I feel like over the last couple of months has become the type of player that Arsenal fans are not really interested in, because he hasn't been good this season. The whole Leicester team has been bad this season. Let's be honest. Like this is a team that I thought would be fighting for top 4 again, and I think they're sitting somewhere in like 13th, 15th, something like that. So they've really fallen off the mark there, and I don't know what's going on with Brendan Rodgers. It seems like they've had a lot of injuries, but Yuri Tielemans has kind of fallen into that category of players where last season, if we had been linked with them, I think people have been really excited. This season, not so much, because he hasn't looked as good. And then there's also a section of the fan base that don't feel like he has the athleticism and the defensive reliability that would be necessary to play in our midfield. But I also take a lot of that with a grain of salt, because I realize that there are some people that will basically say a player cannot play for Arsenal because they want somebody else, or they want a different type of player, or a different player in general. So then the player that we're linked to becomes shit all of a sudden. I'm not going to get sucked into Yuri Tielemans is a bad player. He is not. He's been one of the best, I guess, midfielders in the Premier League outside of the top 4. He really has been. He's had a bad season, and when we look at some of his charts and his metrics, I think that'll become more clear. You always want to take into consideration what's going on with that player, what's going on in the environment, what has been going on. Leicester as a team in general has really fallen off. Very much so. They have really fallen off, and they've had tons of injuries. One of the most significant injuries that have come about for Leicester over the last couple of months has been Wilfred Ndidi. When you lose your central defensive midfielder, your attacking players tend not to look as good. And Yuri Tielemans is the type of player that needs a foundation behind him in order to thrive in midfield. No, he is not a very good two-way player. But does that mean that he's shit? No. Can you construct your midfield in a way where he doesn't get exposed? Absolutely. And I just want to remind people that a couple of seasons ago, there's a player named Granit Xhaka who was described very similarly like Yuri Tielemans. Not somebody that you can depend upon defensively, is calamitous, can't get up and back, is always getting dribbled past. And since Arteta has worked with Granit Xhaka, he's become a very reliable midfielder for us. So I just want to remind people that if Arteta and Edu and everybody is on board with this player, they clearly think that they can put him in a system that will allow him to be the player that we remember from maybe a couple of years ago, just last year. And so when you take everything into context, let's not get sucked into one video, 2 videos of Yuri Tielemans running back, trying to recover a ball or recover a counterattack, because he's just not that player. You know what I mean? And if you want something different in midfield, like you want more of a Basuma type or something like that, somebody more combative, that's fair enough. But that doesn't mean that Yuri Tielemans is shit. It just means you have a different preference, right? So let's move forward a little bit. Is Yuri Tielemans as bad as we think? So these graphics are coming from Adam Vogie. If you don't follow him on Twitter, you should. Actually, let me go ahead and put his information up here, because I want you guys to go ahead and follow him. He does some of the best graphics and statistical work for Arsenal and Arsenal players and people that are linked with Arsenal, so go ahead and give him a follow. But this is coming from Adam Vogie, and this is Yuri Tielemans' Leicester season from 2020-2021, which was last season. So what you'll kind of see here is that, like, attacking wise, that's where Yuri Tielemans really shines. And that's why a lot of people really liked him in past seasons gone by. He scores goals. He's really good with his progressive passing. He touches the ball a lot. He's somebody that Leicester really rely upon to get things ticking. And so you'll see progressive passes per 90, almost 6. His XG buildup chain is pretty big, or pretty good. His live passes are very good as well. His touches per 90, this was last season, obviously, are very, very high. Basically, like, his dribble percentages are very high. He's an attacking player. His key passes aren't bad. Like, that is what he's known for. But what you will see is that, like, defensively, like, his blocks are low. His dribbled pass numbers aren't great. And these get worse this past season, but it's also because he doesn't have Ndidi behind him. Tackles 1, not very good. So he's not a defensive midfielder. That's just not his bag, right? He's an attacking 8. That's really what he is. So you keep that in mind. You'll realize that, like, this is not the type of player we're buying to sit in our double pivot and just shield the back line. So this is this season, and as you can see, it looks very, very different. It looks very different. He's played differently for Leicester this season as well. Like, he's played more off of the right-hand side. Sometimes he's also had to play in the pivot because Wilfred Ndidi hasn't been available. And what that has done to him is it's exposed him further. So what I'm not here to do is to try to convince you that Yuri Tielemans is a great defensive player. What I am trying to convince you of is that Yuri Tielemans is not as bad as we think. And if you have good defensive structure behind him, which Leicester have not had all season, he's just fine. So this season, progressive passes still look pretty good. His expected assists still look really good. His expected XG per 90 is still pretty good. His passes into the final third are still very good. Pass completion is okay. His live passes are fine. His touches per 90 are still pretty good. But I want to see his dribbled past is way worse this season than it was last season. So that's what we're seeing when we're seeing the videos of him running back and getting beat and all of that. Some of that has to do with the fact that Leicester don't have Wilfred Ndidi. They don't have a good defensive structure. They're just kind of winging it. And also I think there's a level of, I'm ready to go, from Yuri Tielemans. And I think there is a discussion to be had around, do we want a player that kind of down tools in a way on their team because they're ready to go? I think that's a very legitimate argument when we start talking about, is Yuri Tielemans the right player to come into Arsenal? But I just don't think that Yuri Tielemans is a shit player is a narrative that I'm willing to buy into. When you add all those things together, you can see why he hasn't had a great season. But I think the most important conversation that we probably want to have is Tielemans a clear upgrade on Granit Xhaka? That's kind of the conversation that I see going on Twitter. Is he better than Granit? Because that's what we're trying to do. We want to upgrade on Granit Xhaka. What is Granit? Granit is good in the double pivot. In Arteta's system, he's been so much better defensively and with his positioning. He's a good passer of the ball. He's a good ball progressor for us. He does a lot of the dirty work. He's a good second ball type of guy. He does a good job. And so we want somebody that's better than him, but maybe we also want somebody who's different. Do we just want a better version of Granit Xhaka, or do we want a different type of player altogether? All right. So Tielemans and Xhaka. So this is going to be the attacking stats in the Premier League play. And this is from 2018 all the way up until now. And let's see. Tielemans is here on the left, is it the left ones, right? So this is his non-penalty XG per 90. And this is Tielemans' expected assists per 90. So just starting with expected goals per 90 or non-penalty XG per 90 for Tielemans, it's not very difficult to see who's the more attacking player of the two. I don't think any of us I could have presented this to you and anybody would have thought that Granit Xhaka would have better attacking metrics than Yuri Tielemans. But what I also want to reiterate is that when we're looking for that left-sided 8, because remember the way that we played when we played our best football this season was with Thomas Partey in the single pivot and Granit Xhaka a little bit further forward. And a lot of people were asking questions. Do we need somebody with more attacking, so it's more technical ability? Do we need somebody with a more attacking nous? What I realized from Granit Xhaka, even against Leeds, when he gets into the final third, when he gets into the box, he's not comfortable. He doesn't have that ability to know, is it time to shoot? Is it time to slip the ball in between two players? Does he have that? He doesn't have that, but Yuri Tielemans definitely does. And what I found interesting here was Granit Xhaka's expected assists per 90 in 2018 was actually really, really good. It's very interesting that when he first came to Arsenal, he had a lot more. He was attacking a lot more, but was he not playing with Coquelin? Who was he playing with? And he was doing more of the box to box role. But we've seen as time has kind of gone on, he's kind of went back into a defensive position. And so he's not really giving us those attacking metrics. And Yuri Tielemans' expected assists per 90. That's really good. He's in the 92nd percentile. That was a while back. That might have been when he was at Monaco, but he's in the 80th percentile. It was a little bit lower last season. I mean, he's a good attacking player. And so if you want somebody more attacking in that position, Yuri Tielemans might fit the bill. So this is the progression stats for Yuri Tielemans and Granit Xhaka. Again, Tielemans is on the left, Granit Xhaka is on the right. And so Granit Xhaka is actually a more progressive player than Yuri Tielemans, which I thought was pretty interesting. That being said, Yuri Tielemans is the 11th. He's in the top 11 for progression statistics of midfielders across the entire Premier League, and he's the youngest in that list. So what that tells us is that there's older players that are doing it, but he's the youngest and he's just right up there with them. So Granit Xhaka obviously does a lot of our progression from that deep position. We know what that position is, but Yuri Tielemans is a little bit further up. So I also think you have to take that into consideration. I think these are pretty good. 83rd percentile is not bad, whereas Granit Xhaka is in the 95th percentile, 95th percentile, 89th percentile. So Granit Xhaka does have better progression stats, but Yuri Tielemans is not that far behind him. So from these metrics, do you guys think that Tielemans is a clear upgrade on Xhaka, or do you still think that the defensive maybe limitations of Tielemans is not really what we're looking for? I have to be honest, you guys, I think in the category of midfielders that we are shopping in at the moment, it's going to be very difficult to get somebody who's really good defensively and also really good in attack. I think those are at the tippy top of the market in terms of midfielders. So that's going to be your Declan Rices, maybe even your Tielemans, these types of guys that are going to cost you an arm and a leg. And you also have to be in every single season Champions League team. And I don't really think we can say that we're that right now. So the next best thing is to find somebody that clearly upgrades your team and upgrades your midfield. Maybe that's not they're not perfect, and you're going to have to make sure your system bolsters them so that their flaws don't get exposed, but they give you what you need in that position to improve you for your next season. And maybe Tielemans can be that for us. Let's see. Zich says Tielemans is not a clear upgrade. He is basically the opposite of Xhaka, strong in attack, but not so much in defense. Mark says we need a CDM and a creative midfielder. Don One says, I think Xhaka is equals to him. Sideways signing. I can't say I feel like he's equal, because when you look at Youri Tielemans' attacking statistics, he's clearly better than XHAKA in attack. So equal to him is not really, I don't really think is accurate. But if you just feel like there's not going to be any difference in the way that we play and we're going to be the exact same team with Tielemans, fair enough. Let's see. Ify says, hear me out. I don't want Tielemans, but since Arteta's tactics is based on positional play, he can work his magic on him. I think that's something that's being really kind of left out right now, is that Granit Xhaka was described very similarly to Youri Tielemans before Arteta came in. He couldn't defend. He got dribbled past a lot. He wasn't positionally aware. He was a liability in defense. Those were a lot of the same things that people were saying about Granit Xhaka. And Arteta has put him in a system, and our positional play puts him in positions where there's always somebody near him. He's not really getting exposed. I think that's what positional play gives you, and having players near you and the distance is right, make it so that if Tielemans was to get dribbled past, there's somebody right there. So I think we're over-indexing this whole Tielemans is this horrible defensive player, because Granit Xhaka, when we're playing well and when we were playing our best football, from about December until March, right before Thomas Partey got injured, Granit Xhaka wasn't doing a lot of defending, you guys. He was doing a lot of, in that left half space, trying to thread balls into Emile Smith-Rowe and Martinelli. And a lot of us were saying, he's just not doing a good enough job. We need somebody different there. Granit Xhaka is doing well, but we need something different. So do we really need somebody to sit in that double pivot and be defensively solid? Or do we need to trust the positional play that Arteta has put into the team and try to upgrade what we can do going forward? Because I'm sorry, Odegaard needs somebody to take some of that creative burden off of his shoulders, and Youri Tielemans can do that. Granit Xhaka cannot. And I'm still want somebody to tell me who we can get that is a clear upgrade on Xhaka, but is defensively solid, but also good in attack, that doesn't cost 60, 70 million. I really want to know who that player is. Tony says a B level player becomes A plus if you put them in the right position. Xhaka and Tielemans are just very different. I want Xhaka in a double pivot. Tielemans is the left 8. And that doesn't mean that Xhaka won't be here as well. Like, if we need something different, Xhaka can play. If we need something more attacking, Tielemans can play. But I think we're making a lot of this, and I do understand where that comes from. It's because he's had some very high profile boo-boos this season. But so has Granit Xhaka, but we don't look at him as this calamity anymore. And that's because Arteta has coached him well. And our system doesn't allow for his flaws to be exposed. So I don't see why it would be any different with Youri Tielemans. And with the price that's being quoted, 30 pounds, 35 pounds, something like that, 35 million pounds, excuse me. I think that's fine for somebody that probably won't be like the number one choice. You know what I mean? But I would hate to buy a limited, if we're going to buy somebody that's not perfect, I don't want to spend a lot on them. But I do think he upgrades us going forward, which is what we need when we have Thomas Partey sitting in that pivot. We don't need somebody who's defensively sound. Like, we do need somebody who's has good positioning and is defensively competent. But do we need a defender? No, I don't think so. Once we move to Thomas Partey playing in that single pivot, I stopped thinking about Basuma altogether, because it blew my mind, and I thought we need something different. Captain Joka says, at Arsenal, we support our players despite their mistakes. Don't come in this chat chatting shit. Okay, there's somebody else. I don't know if you're talking to me or what. Mark says, Tielemans will create more chances than Xhaka. Rich something says he's a different type of player, and I trust Mikel Arteta to make the midfield work. Nashville says, I know I would say he is not a clear upgrade. Maybe he's not a clear upgrade, but he's maybe what we need in that left 8. Alfie says, you all think Elneny is good. FF. Okay. All right. Let's see. Must says, who are the players on bottom? Just can't read it. Oh, I think that was on the chart. I hope you guys could have seen that. Let's see. Rye 2596, thank you so much for your super chat, says, Jess, where do you stand on Arteta? Tielemans is definitely an upgrade on XHAKA technically. What do you think will happen with Saliba next season? Where I stand on Mikel Arteta right now is that he deserves the new contract that he got. I said from the beginning of the season, as long as he finished in the European places, meaning Europa League and above, that I was fine with him going into the next window and getting his striker and getting the new midfielder. This next season for me is where he's really going to have to pump up the volume for me. He's going to be in multiple competitions and expecting to go further than he did this season in some of those competitions. He'll be in Europe. If we're in Champions League, I expect him to get out of the group. If we're in Europa League, I expect us to get at least in the final. You know what I mean? So with Arteta, I'm just like, he's earned the right to stay and to continue on with this project. Am I 100% convinced that he's the guy to take us to the mountaintop? No, but he can do a lot to convince me further by what he does this next season. He needs to be backed with the players that he wants. Edu needs to do a good job at that. But I think Arteta is doing a good job with what he has. And when you look at the team that he has, with they're basically being under 23s with some fringy type of players as well, needing to bring them into the squad to deputize for Kieran Tierney and Thomas Partey and Aubameyang, basically. I think he's doing a good job with that. And so he deserves credit where credit is due. I've given that to him. And I'm happy to see him continue on next season. Tielemans is I think he's an upgrade on what we have technically. Does he have some defensive deficiencies? Absolutely. But I think Arteta, like what he did with XHAKA, can minimize those by coaching him and making sure that he's not being exposed, because he's not going to get exposed in Arsenal system where he does with Brendan Rodgers. And you look at what Brendan Rodgers does, it's very similar to Arsene Wenger in the way where they're not defensively sound at all. They look like they're winging it, but they have a bunch of fun, creative players just going at it and just doing what they want to do. That's how you get exposed. And what do you think will happen with Saliba next season? I'm hoping that he comes back, but honestly, I don't know. I think it could go either way. He has to sign a new deal. I think that's kind of where we're at right now. He needs to be presented with a new deal. He needs to sign it, and then he'll come back in. It could go either way. So yeah, but right now I'm practicing detachment from him because I don't want to be sad if he doesn't come back. So let's see. What are you guys saying? Sohan says, Jess, put it this way. If both Basuma and Tielemans were available for the same price, I'm choosing Basuma, in my opinion, more athletic. Yeah, I mean, it just depends on if it was the same price. I don't think you're going to get Basuma for the same price. But at the same time, like, it just depends on what you need for your system. A lot of people are saying I'd rather play Basuma in the number 6 role and play Thomas Partey as the left-sided 8. I'm okay with that as well. But in this conversation around Tielemans, I just think it's important to be open-minded and remember that there's context surrounding certain players. I know people that think Awar should come in. Awar is not particularly good defensively, and he's also not having a great season, but people still want him because that's who they want. And so when you want a player, you tend to want to see the best, and you will apply context. If you don't like Tielemans, you won't apply the context. And as far as I'm concerned, if everybody at Arsenal, which is Arteta, Edu, the scouts, all think that Tielemans is a good signing for us, I'm willing to hold my hands up and say, I want to see it. So it is what it is, you know? Amira says, question, do you see any of the 3 players so far possibly being our Van Dijk Alisson signing, or are we yet to be properly linked to one? Amira, I don't think any of them are Van Dijk or Alisson, but I do think they can be our Mane and Salah signings, Wijnaldum signings, Andy Robertson signings. I do think we're still there. I don't think we're quite at the Virgil van Dijk, Alisson signings just yet. I think that'll come next summer, not this coming summer, but the summer after. I still think we're balancing out the squad and building up that core group. We're not quite there yet, but I don't see them any of those being Van Dijk or Alisson just yet. Okay, so let me read a couple more of these comments out. I do like Sangari from PSV if we needed a backup CDM, that's who I would go for all day long. Raymond says defensively, XHAKA is a better player, but Tielemans is more mobile. I mean, again, everybody thought XHAKA was really bad defensively a couple seasons ago. This is new stuff that we're talking about here. XHAKA does win a lot of the second balls. I don't know if Tielemans is capable of doing that. That's just something that I think that is definitely something that we need to look at, because the guy that's going to be playing in that position needs to be able to win second balls and be mobile in midfield. So again, this is something that has to be looked at. If Arteta and Adu feel like he can do it, then hey, we just have to trust that he can if he comes in, right? Elliot says Tielemans in our side will score 6 to 10 goals per season. He is a bargain, one of the best in the Premier League. Sign him. I think the narrative around Tielemans is very new and very based on recency bias. He has been one of the best midfielders in the Premier League over the last 3 seasons. Maybe not so much this season, but if we had been linked to him last summer, I don't think the narrative would be the same. And I also think that there's some people, some Arsenal fans that are very popular on Twitter that don't like him, and they can make very good arguments for why we shouldn't bring him in because they want somebody else. And so I may prefer a different midfielder, but I'm also open to seeing the pros and cons of somebody, even if they're not my preferred option. And I think that's that's missing sometimes on Arsenal Twitter, is we have a narrative and we can find arguments to suit our narrative, but we don't always present the entire picture. And that's kind of what I wanted to do. E3 Boss says Ruben Neves is clear of Tielemans. He can defend and create. I don't really particularly like Ruben Neves very much. Whenever I watch him, he just looks very average. And I think he is a pass before the pass type of guy, but he also can sit in front of the back line and shield them and defend. Because Bruno Lage does a good job with his positional play as well. He puts Matinho and Neves in a system where they just have to kind of shield the back line, and they come out of their pockets when it's appropriate, and when it's not, they kind of stay in a compact shape. And so I think Ruben Neves is really good in those type of circumstances. It's just something about Ruben Neves. I don't love him. I don't love Tielemans either, to be honest. But Ruben Neves to me and Tielemans are on the same playing field for me in terms of what they can do for Arsenal. I don't think Neves is such a big upgrade on Granit Xhaka. I think he's closer to Granit Xhaka in profile than Tielemans. Tielemans is like the opposite. So Ruben Neves is more of an 8-6 and Tielemans is more of a 10-8. So yeah, Ruben Neves is not my favorite player, but I can see why a lot of people like him. Rich something says Neves. Sohan says I'm choosing Neves over Tielemans as well. Don One says I want Frankie de Jong. I would love Frankie de Jong. I really would. I think he'd be perfect. But hey, there you go. Fabian Ruiz for me. Henry, the reason why I've kind of blanked my brain out on Fabian Ruiz is because I think he is somebody that Real Madrid is looking at. I think he's somebody that Barcelona will be looking at, but I've seen recent leaks to Real Madrid, and I do see him maybe wanting to go there than coming to the Premier League. And so he doesn't really strike me as a Premier League type of person anyway. So I've kind of blocked my brain out of Fabian Ruiz. But if you're looking for an upgraded Granit Xhaka with some ability in the final third, he's probably a really good choice for that. Elliot Roberts says Tchouaméni would be my first choice. But Tielemans is an excellent second choice. XHAKA, Mark says XHAKA is a jack of all trades, master of none. Yeah. So Orpheus Jones says you guys just need to accept XHAKA is here to stay and staying in the starting 11. Tielemans would be a backup for both XHAKA and Odegaard. I think that's, you're making an assumption as well. I think that Tielemans and XHAKA would share time. I think there'd be certain games for XHAKA and certain games for Tielemans. Do I think he's a clear backup? No. But I don't think we need to accept that he's in the starting 11. Maybe he's here to stay. I don't think he's going to go anywhere. But I think you're also making an assumption that Arteta won't use somebody different if he has somebody that he really wants as well. I think we're all just assuming right now, right? So yeah. But that's kind of the Tielemans chat. Let's see. Becky Ramsdale, thank you so much for your super chat. I really appreciate it. As well as this one. Big up to the channel. Thank you guys so much. Make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribe to the channel. At one point, we almost had 300 people, but now we're at about 264, which is still awesome. So make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel. So the next thing I want to talk about is Elneny. So you guys have already seen this on socials. If you haven't, Elneny seems to be on the verge of signing a new contract with Arsenal or signing an extension. So this is coming from David Ornstein. David Ornstein is saying Arsenal have opened talks over a new contract with Elneny, or for Mohamed Elneny, current terms ending, but club value the 29-year-old and want him to stay. Obviously, if we weren't to give him a new contract or we weren't to sign, he would go for free. But he has stated how much he wants to stay at Arsenal, and he's kind of just looking, he just wants to be involved. He doesn't care how much time he gets and all that kind of stuff. And I think a lot of people really like that about Mohamed Elneny. This is a quote that Arsene said on Elneny in 2016. In every successful team, you need a silent leader. When I say silent leader, I mean somebody who doesn't talk to the media and who doesn't get headlines, but on the pitch does everything that is helpful for the team. And I think we've seen a lot of that in Elneny over the last couple of games. He's been excellent since coming into the team in Thomas Partey's absence. I also think that he's improved quite a bit. We've seen a lot more progression from Elneny in terms of his passing. He's a lot more adventurous. He tries risky passes. The pass that he gave to Nketiah in behind, I think was at the West Ham game, was excellent. And he's had a couple of those since he's come into the team. And so you've seen him really work hard to be better. And I really like that about Mohamed Elneny. I know people view him as this perfect squad player because he's never going to ask for playing time and he's not going to push for a starting position and he just kind of knows his role. But I want to kind of go through a little bit of an interview that Elneny did, I think not too long ago, talking about Arsenal and where he kind of sees himself amongst the other midfielders at Arsenal. So this is Mohamed Elneny talking to, I think this is like on Egyptian TV. And he said, let me see, maybe these are out of, let's see. Okay, so he was saying, the guy was kind of asking a question like, why are you staying at Arsenal and all this kind of stuff if you're not getting playing time? And he was like, but if you see yourself at a club that you were able to be in the starting 11 at Arsenal, I train with them. I can see my level. It's high comparable to them. So basically he feels like he's on the same level as everybody else. And he backs himself to be kind of like a starter at Arsenal. You have to know your level capability. If you are playing with a group and you can see your standard is lower than theirs, then yes, I will pack up and leave in the next day. And he kind of talked about how he's not too arrogant not to know like if he's good enough or not. And clearly, if he wants to stay at Arsenal, he thinks he has some value. He thinks that he can play at this level. And he's clearly worked on his craft to become a better player. And that's apparent by the performances that he's putting in at Arsenal right now. And the guy was kind of like, well, you know, look at what Mo Salah did. He left Chelsea and went to Fiorentina and then ended up at Roma and then went to Liverpool. And that's kind of what you should be doing, you know, when you're not getting playing time. And Elneny said, that's what I did. I took the decision to go on loan. Emery asked me to stay. He told me he wants me, especially for my influence in the dressing room. And so when he didn't think he was up to the standard, he didn't think he was going to get the playing time, he left. And then when he came back, he thought he was to the standard. And so he wants to stay. And he's clearly worked on his game. And he backs himself to be just as good as anybody else at Arsenal to play in that midfield. And you can kind of see that confidence coming out in his performances now. Now, with the whole he's a good guy and he's a good squad player and all this kind of things. You guys know how I feel about it. If you guys don't, I'm not big on the culture guys thing. I think that they're important, but I don't really think I really want people in the team that aren't pushing for playing time. I know some people say that is, you need to have guys in your team that just know their place. I personally feel like you need more competition, and everybody in that team should be fighting to get into the starting 11. But what do I know? I'm just a fan talking to you guys here. What do I know? But it doesn't feel like Elneny thinks of himself as this guy that's just here for fun and culture and all of that. He clearly backs himself to be able to play for this team and feels like he can play for Arsenal. But I want to ask you guys, seeing what's going on with Elneny and that he's getting the new contract, and he's somebody that's good in the locker room. Clearly people really like Rob Holding as well. My question to you guys are these culture guys are culture guys this important to the squad? Do you think you have to have these guys in the team, or do you think we should utilize the positions or the roster spots for more talent? What percentage do you think it is? Do you think it's like 20% culture guys and 80% really good talent? Do you not think that good guys can also be really talented as well? Or do you think I'm missing something here? I want to know what you guys think, because I know that people have strong opinions about this kind of stuff. Do we need squad players that just want to chill and don't care if they get playing time or not? And a lot of that, it seems like there's a big part of the fan base that, since seeing what Nketiah and Rob Holding and Elneny have been doing, that they're more open to the idea of these kind of players being in the squad, even though they're not really going to take us to where we want to go in terms of fighting for titles. But in the meantime, do we need these guys? What do you guys think? Yours Major says the Cinderella slipper will fall off on Elneny when we re-sign him. Wait and see. Saida says culture guys are important to a certain extent, but I'm sure you can get both in one player. Why do people think you have to have one or the other? That's always kind of been my question as well, Saida, is why, I just feel like the culture guys can also be really talented and can up the value of the squad and really push for starting positions. When Thomas Partey comes back into this team, I don't care what anybody says. I know that recency bias is king, but Thomas Partey walks straight back into this team and starts every single game for Arsenal if he's fit. So I don't think Elneny's really pushing Thomas Partey for a spot. I did see somebody put out there that they felt like Elneny's performances have been better than Thomas Partey's, even when Thomas Partey was playing well. Is it crack? Honestly, sometimes I just think this fan base would just get so caught up in what's happening right now. I do it as well. But Thomas Partey is not being pushed for his spot by Mo Elneny. I haven't seen anything that suggests that at this point. Trevelli says, yes, of course. Look at United. We aren't challenging City or Pool for the next few years. Let the squad develop organically. I say keep Mo and Eddie. Tony says, we don't have depth. Keep Mo. We can't buy two strikers and two center midfielders. Fair enough. That's a really good point. P. Trim says, culture guys are important. Look at Man United. Everybody's using Man United as an example. So who are the culture guys at City and Liverpool then? Who do you guys think those guys are? Is it Milner and Fernandinho? Let me know. Whew. When I talk to you guys solo, I'm just my throat gets dry like it's crazy. Sean Davis says, big up Jess. Mo is a good club man, good for team morale. He's somebody that I feel like is going to have a big part in that documentary. I think he's somebody that we're going to probably find out what his influence is on the squad inside the locker room. I think he's somebody that's going to really surprise people. I just have this weird feeling that we're going to see a lot of Mo Elneny in that documentary, really G'ing up the squad and being a leader inside the locker room, even though we don't always see it on the sideline. Mark says competition for places is easier to manage when you're competing in all competitions. Yeah, and I just don't feel like if Thomas Partey got injured at the beginning of the season and he was going to be out for damn near the entire season, I don't think that a lot of Arsenal fans would be honest, would be being honest if they said, okay, Mo Elneny, you do it. Like, I don't think so. I think this is a very small sample size in a time period in the season where everything is very emotional. And so, do I think Mo Elneny is a good squad player? Yes. Do I think we absolutely need these guys in the squad? Not necessarily, but that's just me. Let's see. Survivor says, with more games next season, I think our backup players will be playing more regularly. So I think they need to be of a higher standard. Elneny will be great of late, but I want an upgrade. The Eddie 1401 says, for me, keep Mo. We can improve on him, but would cost a lot. And that new player will still be behind Partey. Would they be as happy as Mo or be another Pepe? I mean, but do we need players to be happy to be behind players? I mean, we're going to be in so many competitions, and I don't know. I don't know if I want players that are just because Pepe, I don't even think, is Pepe even a really good example? Maybe he is, of a player that is not playing and has an attitude or something because they're not playing, so they're not good for the morale of the team. Let's just say that that's what it is. But I want players that want to play and are desperate to play. I feel like that ups the squad quality more than a guy that's hey, I'm just happy to be here. Because I think Thomas Partey needs pressure for his position. I think Bukayo Saka needs pressure for his position. I think Ben White and Gabriel need pressure for their position. I don't think always the next guy up being a guy that's just okay to be there isn't always the best thing. But that's, you guys know where I stand on this. Captain Joka says, Elneny is a good player, but people just don't like him. There is no team in the world with a starting 11 that is 100% world class right now. But is that what we're saying, though, Captain Joka? I don't think anybody's saying that we need everybody to be world class. But I still don't think Elneny is up to the standard that we require, because I remember Elneny performances that weren't quite like this, where we needed something different and we weren't really getting it. So, but am I going to fight somebody if Elneny gets a new contract? No, absolutely not. I just feel like I would go in a different direction if I was Arsenal. I would do something different. But I'm not saying that everybody in the squad needs to be world class. I'm just saying, do we need to re-sign him? Could we not use the resources to bring in a free signing that's of a better quality, where we could actually sell them for money, up the value of the squad, somebody younger that wants to fight, things like that. There's a player called Boubacar Kamara, who's a free signing that can play central defensive midfielder and center back. He would be very valuable to a squad like ours. He plays with Saliba now, but Elneny probably gives you more experience there. I would go for something like that, where the club wants to go for experience and squad harmony, which is fine. Christopher says Partey will be, though, if he keeps getting injured. I guess that's in, I think I know what you mean. I think I know what you mean. Artie says, we're not going to get all top players, so hardworking Elneny is safe backup DM, especially with possible Champions League games when Arsenal definitely will need Partey in more important games. And yeah, I mean, I guess so. That makes sense. Matt says, culture guys are important for now, but as we get better, they become less important. For where we are now, they're crucial, in my opinion. We are lucky to have Elneny holding, etc. What I do like is that what I read was it's going to be a 2-year thing, a 1+1. So we won't be locked into Elneny forever. Essentially, he'll get the next year, and if we don't really need him anymore, he can go about his business, or we can keep him on. So as long as we're not giving him a 3-4 year deal, I think it's fine. Hakum says, depending on our recruitment, we should keep Mo, but realistically, we need to get rid ASAP. Every single one of City's backup players starts for Arsenal, apart from maybe Zinchenko. Yeah, no, I hear that. And we're probably 3 or 4 seasons away from even thinking about getting to that level. So I get what you're saying about that. Like this is a short-term thing, and maybe this is a stopgap. You need the culture guys here right now, improve the starting 11, make sure you have the depth required. And having a really strong starting 11 is probably the way to make sure that you have the type of squad that can fight for top four, and then you kind of rotate that squad a little bit in the other competitions, because one of the most important things for me next season is to keep your Champions League spot if you get it, or consolidate it. So fighting for top four, I do think is going to be harder next season. So our starting 11 is going to have to be very, very good. And so it is okay to have Mo Elneny's in the squad. Marcus says Thiago Silva, Aspi, Milner, Fernandinho, Henderson. Those are the culture guys in other teams. Hey, fair enough. Fair enough. Let's see. So yeah, I think a lot of people are saying like it makes sense. Don One says give him a 2-year deal. That's fair. And it looks like it's damn near done. So at this point, it just is what it is. You know what I mean? So there you go. So last but not least, I want to pull up a tweet that I saw today, and I thought it got a lot of traction, and I want to know what you guys are thinking about it. So this is from SV Carbaholic. He's a pretty big Arsenal Twitter person, and he says, I'll wait and see until stuff is confirmed, but we get Champions League. If we get Champions League, we can't roll up with Elneny, Partey, Lokonga, Tielemans, and Odegaard as our midfield options. That's just not good enough, man. And I wanted to know what you guys thought about that, because I feel like when I'm not really thinking too deeply about it, I feel like, yeah, he's right. Like, that's not good enough. But what are our expectations if we were to get into Champions League anyway? Do we expect to win it? Because I've seen there's teams that are in the Champions League that have gotten out of their groups that aren't significantly better than us. So I just wonder, what are your expectations? And do you think that this is a midfield group that's good enough for Premier League and Champions League potentially? Because I think when you look at it just like that, it's like, is that good enough? But it may be, it may be. And I have a community poll going up right now, so I'll see what you guys are saying. Basically, 44% of you guys say yes, and 56% of you guys say no. So it looks like people are more like it's not good enough. So does he have a point? That the quality is not quite there. I mean, Lokonga is very young, very green. I'm not sure how he's going to develop for next season. Obviously, Odegaard is really good, and Thomas Partey, those are our starters. But adding Tielemans and keeping Elneny, I think, is where people are like, that's not good enough. And so I want to know what you guys are thinking. Let's see. Happily Egg says a good team is a blend of more than just talent. I think Liverpool is a good example of that. Like, there's players at Liverpool that I feel like people don't respect enough, like Henderson and Milner, but they've done such a good job for them over the years and have been a big reason why they've been so successful. So you have to look at that and see that you can go the City route or you can go the Liverpool route. That doesn't mean Liverpool don't have extremely talented players, but it's mixed in with some players that give you those intangibles, which is important. Trevelli says, not good enough for what? We haven't challenged for 18 years. We haven't been in Champions League for 6. The entitled needs to erode like a club standards did a long time ago. Hakum says, Odegaard is sound. We just need to strengthen our defensive midfield. Dev M says, we need more party quality midfielders to compete in the Champions League. P Trim says no. Pioneer says XHAKA as well. Yeah, he wasn't in the tweet, but in the community poll, I added XHAKA in there. O'Malley says Villarreal rolled up with Capu and Coquelin. I mean, that's the reality though, right? Is if I feel like maybe the concern should be more the Premier League than Champions League potentially, because in the Champions League, it's kind of different because it's a competition, it's a tournament, But in the Premier League, I think that's more where is the quality good enough? Because it's day in and day out, 38 games. And if Thomas Partey goes down, what's the next person up? And is that good enough to sustain you for, 3 months, let's say, Saida says, if we're able to upgrade on Lakanga, then I wouldn't be as mad about those midfield options. Sohan says, but right now we need to loan out Lakanga and upgrade him for next season for depth. GD says, no, because of 2 or 3 injuries, we're back to bare bones. I mean, we saw what injuries kind of did to us and like suspensions. We went through we went into Nottingham Forest game with Charlie Patino and Lakanga in our midfield. I don't think that always is going to happen. But, Elneny was there and he didn't even play, right? Oh, no, he was at AFCON. There will be no AFCON. So maybe that's something else to think about. Trevelli says, if we earn enough points to make Champions League, then we have enough quality. Matt Whitham says, he has a point, but we are rebuilding and it doesn't happen over 1 or 2 seasons. We'll take 4 or 5. Alfie says, being honest, Arteta ruined Pepe and Abba. Both of them are class, but Arteta doesn't like anyone questioning him. Oh, fair enough. Zich says, if we get into the Champions League, we will get Bayern or Barca and we will exit in the round of 16. Oh, man. I mean, it's better than not being in the competition at all, in my opinion. Alfie says, I think we would do wonders if we go into Champions League, in my opinion. Nashville Gunner says, that's our current team, 4 through 7th in the league and a quarterfinal. I mean, it's not really like a huge upgrade on our midfield. So, I mean, midfield has been a problem area for Arsenal because when you don't have XHAKA and Thomas Partey, and we're not playing at 100%, we don't have our starting 11. We're not quite a top 4 team, so I do think there's a point there about the quality, like we need more. Don One says, depends on the standard of other clubs. Chelsea are piss poor and they won't last. They won it last year. Fair enough. Trevelli says Chelsea won it last year with the same team. Look at them now. Yeah, I think it's not so much about Champions League. I think it's more about the Premier League. I think that's where we need to up the quality in our midfield. Captain Joker says, just teams don't win the Champions League based on the players. Me and this, look at Man City and PSG. Fair enough. Tony says, my expectations in the Champions League would be get to the knockouts or Europa semifinal if we get group of death. We will be getting group of death if we go. You guys know we're getting the group of death, right? We always do. But we're still a couple of games away from that, so we don't have to get too bogged down in it. Rye 2596 says, how do you feel about the North London Derby on Thursday? I think I am really worried. I see there's a lot of confidence in the fan base, and I think that that's a good thing. I think that we have every right to think that we can win this game, and we're in a position where we can qualify for Champions League by beating Spurs at their place. But what I will say is that Spurs are no slouch. We talk about them as their buds and their shit, and they are, but they're not that crap. Like, you know what I mean? So they have some very good players at the top end of the pitch that can hurt you with just one chance. And we've had an issue these last 9 games or so, where our opponents are scoring with the one shot that they get. So we haven't been great defensively. We've been shakier than we were when we were kind of at the top of our game in the middle of the season. And we're not that good attacking wise either, because we had a chance against Leeds and in many other games to close out the game with a couple of goals, and it ended up being a lot nervier than it should have been. So I think it could go either way. But what I will say is that with every derby, we always know form goes out the window. And I think it might just come down to the team that has the best setup and is able to take advantage of their chances and has the most, there's going to be a lot riding on it. So I think emotion is going to come into it, and it has to be the team that believes the most. Spurs can go into that game and think, Arsenal are in a good position and we just don't feel like playing them. I've seen many games against Spurs where they just didn't look up for playing us in that game. I think against when we were at home, they just didn't look up for it. So that could happen. Or they could be really galvanized by the game against Liverpool, because I do think that they played really well. So I think tapping into the emotions of the game, I think, is going to be really important. I think the team that believes the most could really go through, because this is not going to be a game about, I think this quality is definitely going to be there and being clinical, but the team that really wants it, I think, could get the 3 points, because it's going to be an emotional game. It could be cagey, but yeah, I think Conte will set them up in a way where they won't be as respectful to us as they were with Liverpool. But I still think they'll be in a back three / back five. They'll play. I could probably tell you what their lineup would be right now. Like, we know who it's going to be, and we know they have weaknesses at the back, but so do we. And so, who's going to exploit the weaknesses? Who has the best ability to exploit each other's weaknesses? And I think Son and Kane are so good that we have to be very, very careful. But we have every opportunity, like every chance to win that game and go to the Champions League, and by beating them at their place. And I'm nervous, but I think we can do it. So yeah, you guys. Becky Ramsdale, thank you so much for your super chat. Says she knows Arsenal is big after 1 year and growing. Thank you so much. I'm almost 2 years in, so well, I was 2 years in like February, or 1 year in February, so not quite 2 years, but yeah, the channel is growing and I only have you guys to thank. But yeah, you guys, the North London Derby is coming up, so the majority of content beyond now will probably be about that. Arsenal Vision, I know, is doing a live stream before the game, so make sure that you guys are subscribed to their channel. And I'll do a preview on Wednesday, and tomorrow, depending on what kind of news comes out, I'll do a show then. Make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel, let people know about the channel. My goal was to get to like at least 8,000 by the end of the season, so I'm a little bit behind that. I think I have 7,730 subscribers. So if I could get to 800 or 8,000, that would be amazing. And yeah, I really enjoyed having you guys, just have this random conversation and do another daily show. Remember, all the graphics were from Adam Vogue. So if you guys can give him a follow on Twitter, I'd greatly appreciate that. And make sure you guys follow me on Twitter at JustTweets and at SheKnowsArsenal. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.